Here we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Waneka Village Council for March 15th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask everyone to mute or turn off your cell phone or other electronic devices. Do we have to still do a roll call for attendance? Yes. Oh. Kristen, can you please do a roll call?
Trustee Dahlman. Here. Trustee Dearborn. Here. Trustee Apatow. Here. Trustee Kripe.
Here. Trustee
Mancini. Here. President Rentz.
Here. Item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance, and Trustee Apatow will lead us in that.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Kristen, would you like to do a quorum check for us, please?
Yes. So does everyone plan to attend April 5th regular meeting? Okay. April 12th study session?
I may end up missing that.
Okay.
I'm working on, well, on both. I may be working outside down teaching in Miami, so for Kellogg. So I talked to Rob about somehow figuring out how to, especially on the 12th, to call in.
So participate remotely due to work purposes. Yep, we can contact you about that. And then, thank you, April 19th regular meeting?
I have that same thing on the 19th.
Okay.
I'll be out of town working, but I can call it.
Okay.
I may be at the same issue.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, item 4, public comment. Kristen, do we have any public comment that has come in through the mail?
Yes, President Rentz, we had one public comment submitted via email. It reads, Dear Chief Hornstein, on the 8th of March 2022, a Waneka patrol officer informed me and my friends that a homeowner had complained that we were on her private beach. I have no issue with the officer. She was polite, clear, and professional. However, I don't believe the complaint was valid. First, let me say we were physically present on the beach immediately north of the Lloyd Beach Pier. However, there are 2 reasons why I believe our presence there was and is legal. Point 1, public trust doctrine. Under the public trust doctrine, the public is recognized to have the right to access all of the Illinois beaches of Lake Michigan below the high water mark for commercial, environmental, fishing, navigation, and recreational purposes. Point 2, property ownership. According to the online Cook County map application, the village owns the lakefront portion of the beach north of Lloyd Beach. To facilitate using the map, go directly to the intersection of Tower Road and Sheridan and follow Tower Road due east south of the Waneka power plant. An image is attached. What I'd like to happen is twofold. Point 1, that Waneka adopt and publish a clear policy regarding the right of all individuals to walk across public and private beaches in Illinois below the high water mark in accordance with the longstanding public trust doctrine and applicable Illinois case law. Point 2, clarify the ownership of the property north of the Lloyd Pier. If there are any title documents that show title is vested in the adjacent riparian owners, I request that the Village of Waneka please provide them. It seems to me these issues lack practical, implementable clarity. This lack of clarity frustrates the beachgoers, the owners of the property along the lakeshore, and the police who are asked to enforce a law that almost no one knows the facts about. Please acknowledge receipt of this letter. Regards, Alan Welch, 890 Willow Road, Waneka. And President Rentz, I'd like to report that Chief Hornstein is in contact with Mr. Welch and is arranging a meeting to address and find out more about his concerns.
Great, and as you were reading it, it occurred to me too that I should really reach out and talk to Warren James about having the Park District take the lead on this, since they control far more accessible beach than the village does, and I think they should be the ones kind of taking the forefront on this and establishing clear rules for the residents to follow. So I'll report back on that as we go forward. Anybody in the audience wish to speak on matters not on the agenda? And of the 4 people that are here, all are here for something else, so we'll let that go. All right, reports. We'll start down here. Trustee reports. Tina, any report? Bob?
No report, Chris.
Kim? Andy?
No report.
Rob? Okay, village attorney? No report. Assistant village manager?
No report.
Okay, and the president. I just want to bring you guys up to date on a few things. About a week and a half ago, I met with the president of the Audubon Society in an effort to help her better understand our stormwater project in the Forest Preserve property. There's been a lot of bad information floating around from advocates and others that seem to be pointed more at riling people up than they do on informing them of actually what's going on. I also had a meeting along with our village engineer, Jim Bernal, and others with the Army Corps on Friday related to their permitting on both the Forest Preserve site and on the golf course site. And as predicted, they seem to be pretty interested in how large our checkbook is. And I can assure all of us that I will be reaching out on a much higher level to see if we can cut through some of the BS there and get them to assess our project in a fair and equitable manner. Regretfully, there seems to have been a sense with a lot of the advocacy groups and with people not familiar with the project, because Waneka has deep pockets, that it's time to open up and start taking. And there's no way I'm going to stand for that, and I'll keep you guys apprised as we move through that. Tough week on stormwater, to say the least. So, but we forge ahead. All right, item, what are we on now?
The music festival.
Oh, 5, is that 6, 5 or, oh, that's 5A, okay, 5A. The Music Fest presentation. The Waneka Music Fest will take place on June 18th this year. Scott Myers is here to present the plan and tell us a little bit about this year's fest. Come on up, Scott.
Great. Good to see everybody. I guess what I want to do is cover just a couple quick things on the music festival. Most of you have been sitting on the council the last times I've come up here, but for some of you, it's relatively new. Hopefully, you've been able to be at the fest. There are a number of similarities this year to the past festivals. There are a few changes. You know, as I think everybody has recognized, the whole mission of the festival is to try and bring high-quality music to Waneka that draws residents to the downtown area. Put on a great festival that is both great in terms of music, but also great in terms of an opportunity for the community to come together and gather. That is still the mission this year. That is still our focus, is to kind of both have an event that attracts community members and offers a great opportunity for them to feel great about Waneka, but also to show off Waneka and to attract people not only from the North Shore, but also up from the city. Unlike last year, where we had to deal with COVID and had to be out on the Skokie playfields for social distancing, this year we've moved it back to downtown, where it started out for the first 3 years. I think there was a widespread interest by people to have that in the community, because it's unique to be in the downtown area, and I think it just adds to showing off the town. One thing that we are changing this year is, as with last year, we've kept it as kind of a one-day festival. Historically, it's been a day and a half. As we were planning the festival, two things. One is financial losses from last year, as well as COVID uncertainty about this year. When we were in the planning stage, said we need to just keep it at one day. We've also consolidated it a bit. Before, we had activities out on the Village Green. We had another stage on Lincoln, south of Elm Street. Here again, just to try and manage things financially, we've consolidated to one main stage, which will be in the Village parking lot behind the community house. But we are adding a small stage north on Lincoln Avenue, which will be used for two things. This will be a small stage, think of it just opposite the grassy area in front of the community house. So the stage that used to be on the Village Green will now be there. It will be used as a family stage, plus, I will call it a local band stage.
Local, thank you.
We'll refer to it that way. One of the things we've struggled with is getting people to come in the early afternoon. And we think that by perhaps having some local bands, some of whom perhaps are of ages of people here, who have a lot of friends and a lot of energy, but perhaps have missed their calling as professional musicians.
I'm most happy.
We're going to give a few of them the opportunity to get up and perform, and we think this will be kind of a nice casual way to bring people out in the mid-afternoon time frame. Starting in the late afternoon, early evening, though, this year we've made another change, which is we're having more nationally known artists. In the past, it's always been emerging artists, and there will still be emerging artists in the chapel stage. But this year, one of the things we wanted to do, because we had shifted to one day, is to make it exciting, for the fans to come out. Some of you who were maybe in college during the 90s may remember, not many of you, but may remember the band Guster. So Guster will be the headliner, and then another band that is very, very much emerging around the country is the Record Company. So they'll also be there. We'll be announcing 2 additional bands on the main stage. So, in total, with the family stage and the chapel stage and the main stage and the local stage, we'll still end up having some probably, 14 to 18 bands performing. And, fingers crossed, we still have great weather. And clearly, this is an event that only can be put on because of the continued kind of public-private partnership, residents stepping up as volunteers, as planners and organizers, and then the village, the park district, the chamber really, helping and supporting and making this possible. So we're ready to do it one more year, and hopefully it will continue to be a success. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple. So as we're consolidating, what numbers do you need to make this work this year?
Yeah, so it's a mix, right? It's a mix of how many sponsors do we get,
Right.
how many VIPs do we get, how many general admissions do we get. We're having very positive responses on the sponsorship front, so that's going well. I think that the VIP tickets are literally almost sold out. We're trying to figure out how to expand the VIP area. But as of tonight, before I left, we've sold some 450 VIP tickets.
Wow.
So GA, we probably need about 4,000 GA tickets. And that will enable us to kind of meet the goal, which we've always had but never achieved, of not only paying for the festival, but having some amount of surplus that serves as the pool that can enable the planning to get started for the following year. So that's kind of roughly the numbers. So all told, we're hoping to have about 4,500 people.
So if that, as we had before, it was spread out over different areas.
Yeah.
Will that fit?
Yeah. So as we've looked at the parking lot and the feeder parking lot, we can get that many people in there. You never have everybody in there. People are on the street. There are some people who come really to socialize. So there'll be people out there, people going back and forth. But yeah, we do have the space.
Okay, great.
So, okay.
I like it.
I'm excited it's back.
Yeah. You may want to turn on your microphone too.
There we go. I remember a couple years ago, I went into a shop and they were pretty cranky. No, it was East Elm, actually.
Yeah. There have been some. I think I know which shop you're talking
Yeah,
about.
and
Yeah.
pandemic happens.
Sure.
Perspectives change, hopefully. Has the chamber reached out to those merchants and also?
I can answer that too, because I'm the liaison to the chamber. I brought this up to the chamber.
Oh, okay.
And overwhelmingly, I heard no nobody's saying, they all wanted it back on the street.
Okay.
They all wanted it back in town.
Yeah, and
I was shocked.
yeah, and I think that's,
Perspective.
you're never going to have 100% of people loving something. And, you know, I think that there have been some businesses who, you know, they like their Saturday routine, and this disrupts the routine, right? We will be, in the past, we've had to close down Elm Street and Lincoln for most of all of Friday and Saturday. So this year, you know, we're hoping to restrict the street closures. That will make it a little bit easier, but there still will be closures. Terry has already arranged for a meeting with all the Lincoln Avenue businesses, as well as we're inviting all the restaurants in town to a meeting on the 29th or 28th of March, where we'll have a chance to show them the map, answer their questions. I'm fully expecting that not everyone will be in love with it, but I think that, you know, it's one of those things for the greater good of the community. It's, you know, it's an afternoon of disruption. Yeah, so the question for anybody watching at home on their video, the question was, what's the plan on tearing everything down? Right, so the idea is everything will be disassembled on Sunday, and the streets will be back to normal, hopefully before 3 a.m. on Sunday morning.
And then my only other question is, with that local stage, and there's a few houses on
Yep.
Lincoln, I'm assuming you've already reached out to those residents?
So no, we haven't. We've been kind of trying to figure this out, but yeah, that is, you know, one of the next things is there's about, I want to say 5 houses north on Lincoln on the east side. There's also residents in Galleria. And, you know, what we've always done for them is provided parking for their cars on the Pine Street parking lot of the community house. We've also obviously given them tickets into the festival. And, you know, and I'm sorry, there's also the condominiums right next door. And, you know, people have been very accommodating. So, yeah.
Do we extend curfew or the noise ordinance for this? Or should we?
I mean, we've pretty much wrapped up. The music stops at about 10:30, 10:45.
That's what I'm wondering, if we push it to 11, I mean, it's kind of like,
I think the ordinance is 11 o'clock, and so
11,
we
okay.
pretty much have contracted all the bands, with all the bands, and told them, you know,
Okay.
11 o'clock is end time.
okay.
So, okay.
So Scott, first off, I commend you and Val and Mark for keeping this baby going. It was probably on
Idiots that we are.
fingernails for a while there.
Yes,
but,
it was.
So, I don't know, I think it's great. As things stand today, is there any COVID protocol that you're going to be following? Are we just,
I mean, right now, as of, you know, the ordinances from the county, you know, we continue to watch, but there's nothing that is planned, you know, at this point. I will tell you that the way we've designed both the south entrance and the north entrance, we have room so that if, you know, come May, something happens and we needed to put in, you know, last year, anybody who went, you had to show your vaccine card or get tested. We could do the same thing. We have room to call that audible if we need to.
great?
Okay?
Great.
Great.
All right.
Thanks.
Scott,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the hard work. I don't think people understand or realize that this is a full-time job for you. And the community does really appreciate it, and your efforts are just amazing. Thanks for doing it another year, really. I know it wasn't an easy choice to forge forward either, but glad to hear you guys are doing it, so.
Yep.
All right. Any public comments? Terry says no, so we'll go on with item B, Waneka School District 36, Community Outreach Presentation. Waneka Public School District Superintendent is here to present information regarding the 2022 Downsized Capital Improvement Proposal and Referendum Question. Trish, I had you up first, but it looks like Dawn's going to jump, or?
They actually are going to present tonight. I'm here.
Who's ever going to talk, just come on up.
Thank you for having us here this evening, and thanks for giving us some of your valuable meeting time. I am Dawn Livingston. I'm actually the president of the Waneka School Board. Our superintendent, Dr. Casanda, is here. However, I will be presenting this tonight with Emily Rose, who's our vice president, and will be stepping into the president role next month.
Wow.
We want to take just a few minutes tonight to familiarize you with our downsized capital improvement proposal.
Can can I have you just sneak to the microphone?
Sorry, I tend to walk as I
Okay.
talk. We want to take just a few minutes tonight to familiarize you with our downsized capital improvement proposal. As I'm sure you're aware, in 2019, the district went out for a $90.6 million referendum that failed. We have taken the last 3 years to meet with our community in a variety of contexts. We've had one-on-one interviews with a number of people. We've met with groups. We've had organizational meetings with groups in Waneka. We also convened a 23-person citizens task force that really helped us to delve down into why the referendum failed, what our community values, and what types of capital improvements they would be willing to fund. So this time around, we also went through our own financial information and really drilled down to what we believe are the essential needs that we have to have as a district to maintain our schools and maintain the excellence in education that Waneka is known for. So the new ask of the community is $59.4 million. At least that's what's being contemplated. It's also being contemplated that we will go out for this referendum in November of this year. Emily is one of 2 board members who've spearheaded this new referendum initiative. So I'm going to let her walk you through the actual plan. And then we would love to hear your thoughts and, of course, answer any questions that you have.
Okay. So you all, thank you for having us. You're the final stop on my road show of the first quarter. So I have been all over town and meeting with anyone and everyone who will have us to learn more. So Dawn has done a great job kind of laying the groundwork in terms of why 2019 failed, the inklings on that, the action steps that we've taken. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail. So to boil it down, 2019 failed because of size, scope, Skokie, and really the lack of a value proposition on the plan for the residents of Waneka, and they said no. So what did we do? We dug in deep after that. We said we have to take care of these schools. Excellence in education in Waneka is a core value. What do we need to do now that we've had deferred maintenance and there's things that cannot wait? So we brought in a new architect. We dived in deep into the mechanicals in order to truly understand in depth the lifespan of the elements of the buildings. And then we came up with a 3-year plan in order to address the most pressing needs across the 5 schools in the district. So as Dawn mentioned, we've done a lot of work to get to the point where we are, and really we've had the help of the community in order to get us to this point. So the Citizens Task Force played a very important role. So in terms of where we are in the process, oops, wrong way. One more. We've done a lot of back work. We have looked at the proposals, we've talked with the community, we've listened, we've revisited caucus surveys dating back to 2017, where questions were asked about capital improvements, where there was ability and interest to support, what the values of education are in Waneka. We've brought together a group to help us develop the proposal, which they presented to Dr. Casanda and that the board adopted. And then we're in this outreach phase in terms of bringing the messaging about this proposal and why we believe in this to the community rather than asking the community to come to us. So as Dawn mentioned, if we have broad community support with the plan as it stands today, we would move forward with a referendum in terms of adopting a resolution in August for a November vote. You should have all received in your mailboxes over the weekend a opinion poll, which asks a lot of questions, and there might be some hard pills to swallow in that feedback. But really the point is in order to allow every resident in Waneka the opportunity to share their feedback on the school district, on the proposal, and how they would like to see the community move forward with the schools. So what's next? You've had this packet, but I really want to start with 3 fundamental elements that fed into this downsized capital improvements proposal. The first being the fiscal stewardship of the Waneka Public Schools Board and Administration. So I'm going to go backwards a little bit in time and start in the 90s. So in the 90s, the board at the time determined that it was appropriate to cap the ability for the school district to borrow without taxpayer approval. This is foundational to the philosophy of the Waneka Public Schools, which is when there is need, that the community would support the schools if there was a ask brought to the community. So the way this was limited was through our DSEB levels, so it's debt service extension base. Unlike the other New Trier Center schools, we have a limit in terms of what we can borrow on an annual basis to address ongoing capital needs. So we're currently at about $110,000 that we could borrow from a debt standpoint, whereas New Trier is in millions that they can take out on an annual basis. So that was put in place because the residents felt the residents should approve expenditures for the school, which is fair. The 2007 referendum, which was the last approved referendum, came in favorable because, as you'll recall, the 2008 recession occurred and costs came in less than originally anticipated. So the proceeds from that referendum allowed the school district to take care of some more ongoing needs that we otherwise would not have been able to address with our current borrowing. 2017, this is important because the board at the time said, we can no longer continue to spend against school buildings without a holistic view of what the future of the facilities needs of this district is. So they took the time to say, we're going to stop spending, we're going to come up with an educational master facility plan that boards now and in the future could use as their roadmap in terms of identifying spending that was appropriate in order to deliver upon the educational values of Waneka. So that plan put in place allowed us to view the way forward. When the 2019 referendum failed, we still have the needs. So now we're back to say, what is it that we could support in Waneka? The second piece, which is also important, is that we really see this plan as a baton pass from 2007. In 2007, the taxpayers were asked to support a referendum that touched all 5 schools. It addressed health, life, safety at all schools, and where there was an educational need or a community need, additions and renovations were proposed. All the additions and renovations occurred at Greeley and at Carleton Washburn School in order to allow for spaces for kids to stay for lunch, for kids to do more in-depth science, all sorts of things, maker spaces, resource centers. So it provided those educational spaces that were required at the time. Finally, the values of Waneka, and I think we can all agree on this. As excellence in education is a core value of every resident in Waneka. Whether you currently have a student in the district, or you have a student coming up, or you have a child that has graduated out of the public schools, excellence in education is critical. Neighborhood schools is critical. Dedicated space for learning, small classroom sizes. The 5 buildings, it came through loud and clear that this community values all 5 buildings. And all of these values are important, but they require the investment of the community in order to keep the values continuing on. So, what's the plan? You've seen this, so I'll just top line it. It's $31 million less. It keeps Skokie open as a 5th through 6th building as it currently is. There's no addition and renovation costs at Carleton Washburn. Carleton Washburn still requires investment due to end of life of mechanicals, electrical upgrades, things like that. We no longer have any debt in the district, and the district has said, we're going to fund more. We took on a 3-year capital improvements plan to take on the most pressing needs that had been delayed since 2017, and we're allocating another $9 million of our fund balance to take off some of the needs from the taxpayers. Okay. The takeaway on this slide is that the critical needs still exist, but where we're talking about additions and renovations, it's to address physical equity of space across the elementary schools that is impacting the educational experience. So the concept is really no matter where you buy your home in Waneka, your children should have access to similar spaces in order to do their best learning and thinking every day at school. So the additions and renovations that you'll see in here at 22% of the spend is just at Crow Island and Hubbard Wood School. Okay. So the money slide. So this is a look at our 15-year capital expenditures. Everything in a shade of green is money that has been spent. So just to ground you from that standpoint. You'll notice that 66% of the spend with the 2007 referendum was allocated to Greeley and Carleton Washburn School. So as I mentioned at the time, the community needs were changing. Kids were staying for lunch at a much higher rate than ever before. The science curriculum at middle school was modified. We needed more hands-on, larger science spaces, kinetic wellness. All of those things were addressed at Greeley and Carleton Washburn, and then, as I mentioned before, health, life, safety at the other schools. You'll notice as the years went on, funding was needed at the remaining schools in order to take care of needs, and then we have our 3-year critical facilities needs plan at $14.2 million, which addressed health, life, safety, plumbing, water, piping, not exciting stuff, accessibility at Crow Island where there was immediate need, and then HVAC and fire safety where things were requiring to be updated. So these were prioritized as the most pressing needs and were immediately funded. We're in our 3rd year of this plan. Then you'll see the total plan costs for the 2022 proposed plan at 68.4. So this doesn't include the $9 million that would be allocated from the district. But the total plan has primarily investment at Crow Island and Hubbard Woods with those additions and renovations. And then across the board, everyone is getting kind of the behind the drywall work, safety and security updates, and where there's mechanical systems at the end of the life, they're being replaced. Okay, anticipated benefits of the plan. And I want to walk you through this slide as kind of a lens of how to look at the plans that I'm going to show you for Crow Island and Hubbard Woods. Really, what this plan delivers is healthier, safer, more secure schools. It provides accessibility for everyone, students, teachers, community members. Replacing mechanicals that are out of date provides us with energy efficient opportunities. It extends the life of these beloved buildings that are critical to the fabric of this community. It reduces our emergency costs of repairs. And really important, it continues to meet the ever-changing needs of our community. Our community's evolving. We have more people moving in. 95% of our kids stay for lunch every day. We need spaces in order to really allow families to see Waneka as a viable place to raise their children and educate their children. Multi-purpose rooms, we've kind of talked about it. It's really important. We host before and after school care for families at the 3 elementary schools. And we expect that program to grow, especially as there's the return to the office initiatives around with COVID modifying. And finally, physical equity of space. I can't underscore this enough, but we need to make sure that no matter where you live in Waneka, your children have access to the spaces they need to do their best learning. And it's also equity of space within a school. No matter what your mobility, you should be allowed and able to access the space that you need with your peers in order to do that. And I know that our 2 playgrounds, one at Hubbard Woods and one at Greeley, went through, I think, zoning recently or yesterday. And we plan to install 2 accessible playgrounds at both of those schools, both for the benefit of the schools, but also the benefit of the community to allow more accessible space for anyone who comes into this community who may have physical differences. What more did I want to say? Teacher recruitment, it's not on this slide, but it's important. It's no surprise, there's a national teacher shortage. Waneka is not immune from that issue. So we need to provide spaces that attract teachers and teachers that want to stay and grow their careers in Waneka. So we anticipate needing new teachers in the future, and it is true. If a teacher looks at us and says, well, you don't have air conditioning, and 10% of your days are at a heat index of what have you, your kids are dysregulated, why would I want to work there? It's true. We're going to get into that situation where teacher recruitment and retention is going to become an issue. Okay, so I mentioned just Crow Island and Hubbard Woods, unless you have other questions on the other plans, because a lot of it is carryover and we want to be respectful of your time. Looking at Crow Island, starting in the south, you'll see the yellow is listed as addition. All of this has been done with stormwater in mind. I'll just get that out there from the jump. So this includes the addition of a 5,500 square foot gymnasium space in the back, which is comparable to that which is at Hubbard Woods at 5,200 square feet. It adds on 3 classrooms, which would remove the trailer classrooms off the property and allow dedicated space for music and Spanish. It renovates in red the current gymnasium, which is 2,100 square feet, into a multi-purpose room and cafeteria to allow a dedicated space for kids to eat lunch. Currently at Crow Island, they eat in the vestibule, or the foyer, and the basement, which they've made work for a long time, but it's time to have a space. The renovation of the basement library resource center. Greeley and Hubbard Woods have beautiful library resource center maker spaces that allow for hands-on learning, integrated instruction, multi-class collaboration. The same is needed at Crow Island. And then finally, we have the vestibule. We will be doing this across all the schools except Washburn, but safety and security, as I mentioned before, is critically important, and it's time to upgrade our systems in Waneka. And we've worked collaboratively already with the police in order to kind of look at what best practices are, but it's not just about the entrance and exit, it's about communication, it's about containment. There's a lot that would go into this from a safety security standpoint in order to bring our schools forward. And then all the behind the drywall, which I won't go through, but it includes air conditioning, I'll just say that. Looking at Hubbard Woods. So here you see, and this is a little bit out of, I don't love this visual because it looks bigger than it really is. The gym behind the addition for the multipurpose room is 5,100 square feet. This proposed multipurpose room cafeteria is 3,500 square feet. I am told the Muscle Man, does that make sense? Is that, okay, so it will have to be relocated, or? Okay. Okay, so it will be cared for very gently, but it will need to find a new home. So it won't take up blacktop space per se, so it won't impact the access to the outdoors, but the Muscle Man and maybe some garden will have to be relocated. So this allows both the multipurpose room cafeteria for students, and then it relocates the staff break room, lunchroom to that location as well to allow for renovation for a secure entrance and exit vestibule. So with that, my final slide, I think. Really, this is to say this proposal will take care of the maintenance, repairs, and critical upgrades at all 5 schools. It takes care of that. And where we are asking for addition and renovation is really to provide that equity of space where there's an impact on the educational experience. So I think that's all I had. Next steps, you can read this slide, but this is really the community's plan. We're asking for the community's feedback. We've been listening for 3 years. We want to hear what the community has to say, and we really hope and anticipate that the community will find value in this proposal and investing in the schools in order to continue the excellence in education in Waneka that we all know and I think we love. So with that, if you have any questions.
Questions, and we'd love to hear your feedback, too.
Sure. Go ahead, Kim.
I'll just say, I have a few questions, but I'll leave, just answer. Thank you for this presentation, Emily. This was so wonderful. I didn't know the history. One of my questions when I went over the homework was, why are we not issuing a municipal bond instead of increasing our property taxes? And if the case was we were supposed to reduce operational costs, it could be adaptive bond, et cetera. But is there any thoughts to how we would come back to not having us have a $110,000 cap per year for?
That's a legislative. Yeah, I don't. That's a legislative act. I don't know how we would go about doing that, but I mean, you also have to think about it this way, and this is the way I think about it: is would I rather have a holistic plan that has community support, or would I rather just continue to borrow and build up debt that the taxpayers are going to have to pay for one way or the other? I don't know. I kind of align with the philosophy of Waneka, which is to say, let's vet it, let's support it, and then let's pay for it. So I don't know that I would be Wilmette at multi-millions in order to renovate resource centers without taxpayer approval. So it's a philosophical debate.
But the history was really interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah, Yeah, we're the low, I mean, we are, I could send you a chart.
Oh, I saw that.
Okay, it's in the deck. Okay, perfect.
If we're adding $832 per $1 million value of your home each year, where does that then net us with that addition amongst our peers in terms of property taxes?
So we're in the top 2 to 4. I mean, we're
Competitive, like would someone who's trying to move up from the city say, I'm looking at homes, you increase property taxes by X, Y, Z? Like, what
yeah.
would we
Do I have the slide in here? Not in here. So we're in the top 2 to 4, depending upon the year and the in terms of tax rate. I don't know that it would swing it dramatically into the top 1, and you know, I don't know what people's plans are either. I mean, Sears is undergoing a renovation currently. We know that obviously New Trier has a $75 million project, which is not being funded out of a referendum, but they're utilizing DSEB, alternative revenue bonds, and sweeping operation savings into a capital expenditure account. So they could lower their tax levy if they wanted to.
I think it's also important to recognize, I think, at least among the people that I've spoken to, they aren't just looking at the property taxes, they're also looking at the schools. And as you know, we're surrounded by districts that have put the money into their schools. So I think we are, in some ways, we kind of need to do that from a competitive standpoint.
So I'm fully supportive. My kids are directly impacted by this. I have a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So I remember moving here and having grown up in Lake Zurich. I moved to what I thought was the fancy town to only walk into the schools and go, these are the schools? It was crazy to me. I've grown to love the charm, and I think it's wonderful and all good things, but to be competitive with brand new shiny schools in neighboring districts is a challenge. So I recognize that, yeah.
I just want to thank you. We are now proud graduates of Hubbard Woods and the Waneka Public Schools. My 3 daughters went through. Just had one, I am so thrilled to see that the philosophy is changing about lunch in the schools. When we first moved here, I was told flat out by the principal at Hubbard Woods that my daughter really couldn't spend, lunch at school. Really tough for working moms, and I know the demographics are swinging very strongly in a different direction. So thank you for doing that, creating dedicated space for cafeteria. One of the things, I don't know, programmatically, are you also thinking about, school-provided lunches or something other than the PTO or the, World Travelers, all the kind of parent-initiated programs? That's only one thing I'd suggest, although that's tricky with COVID. But thank you for making it more welcoming for those working moms, because I'll never forget the day when I was sitting in my doctor's office and she's like, "You're moving to Waneka? Don't you know it's really hostile to working women?" I'm not kidding you, because we were living in Wilmette. So I think all the changes that you've made are really great. We still love the school. One of the things I wanted to ask was also about demographics, because I think there's been, there's a lot of things that went kind of wrong with 2019. One of them, frankly, was the timing of the election. That was also it was right after spring break. Some people weren't even back. But I also think the demographics have changed. Has the board, have you changed your numbers? Because at the time you're projecting a pretty steep decline in enrollment going into 2019, and that's why some of it was focused on consolidation, as I remember. I've got to believe that's changed with all these new families moving in. And has that changed your thinking about the facilities?
Go ahead. Well, I'll start, and then Dawn can finish or correct me where I mess up. Enrollment, great question. We are not yet able to study changes in enrollment due to the pandemic because the data is too unstable.
Okay.
We have qualitative factors, like I was just talking with one of the preschools, and they have a 20-person wait list for their TWOS program. Qualitatively, okay, that's interesting, because that's, if we pan that out across all the preschools in Waneka, that's 3 sections of kindergarten. And how long is that going to hold? The enrollment was projected to decline to stabilize, and it has done that even through COVID. We've seen a decline and a stabilization. Will we have a large boom? Are those folks who are moving into the town, are they just arriving earlier than they anticipated? We don't know yet, but we're trying to gather more qualitative information. But your answer is no, we don't have a new study.
Okay.
But I'll just add on to that a little bit. So when we did the redistricting in, what year was that, Tricia? 2019. Well, we had commissioned a demographics study, right? It is amazing how accurate that still is. And it was done way before COVID. We were just a few percentage points off. As Emily said, what was predicted to happen has happened, and we were within just a few points of where they actually predicted we would be. Every year we track people coming in and leaving the district. We also track where they go. So what we have seen is we have a big plus, way more people coming into District 36 than are leaving District 36 to go to other schools. So we're not getting a big exodus to private schools. People are obviously coming in from the city. We're not getting people leaving to go to other schools or other parts of the state. What we have seen is a lot of people leaving the state. So almost all of our exodus has been people that are choosing to leave Illinois altogether. And I think that is the counterbalance that is perhaps going to keep us from, and we are seeing, as Emily said, we don't have a study, but we are hearing, and sort of anecdotally we believe there are more younger families moving to Waneka from the city, but what we're also seeing is a greater exodus from Illinois generally. So how those two are going to balance out, I don't know, but I can tell you right now, we're actually not too far off from where they said we'd be 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing. So ISB, Illinois State Board of Education, reported that enrollment across the state of Illinois is down 3.5%. We are not down 3.5% due to the pandemic in terms of year over year. So one would say that we're faring better than most, but again, time will tell.
And then the only other, that's great. I just wanted to make sure, you obviously have got your fingers on the pulse of that, trying to figure it out. And I like the fact that you aren't trying to consolidate Skokie into Washburn, because it keeps your options open, obviously. The only other thing, and I think it's already been taken care of, the lead pipes in some of those schools for drinking water, or is that part of this plan, kind of behind the drywall sort of aspect?
So Emily talked about the $14.5 million we've spent over 3 years. That was one of the things we hit hard. So I believe there are still a few this summer, yeah. So that'll be finished this summer, the lead and the pipes issues. We still have to replace some steam pipes with, there are some piping fixes, but the lead piece has been taken care of, or will be completely taken care of by the summer.
Great. Thank you for all your hard work on this and listening to the community and coming back with a new proposal. I think it's great. Thank you.
Right, Bob.
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. Just a couple clarifications. The project, the scope of the project, I think I misheard. The total project $68 million, and that includes the $9 million of reserves. Is that?
Correct.
That's correct.
The expected ask of the taxpayer is 59.4, so we're adding the 9.
And so add the 9. Okay. And just on Trustee Mancini's point, and I assume, are you not issuing bonds to pay for this?
Yes, we would be issuing bonds.
I think they are issuing bonds.
Yeah.
I thought
So I think it's like probably like
issue it that way.
stormwater.
Got it. Yeah.
Probably like the stormwater fund.
Yeah.
This will be the incremental taxation will go into a separate debt financing.
Correct.
pool?
We expect to take 3 tranches, I guess is the term the CFO uses, against this, depending upon where we are in terms of the project scope, in terms of, shovels in the ground kind of thing.
Now, is that pro forma available for residents to look at? Sort of the financing plan?
It will be. So again, we are in the proposal phase of this, and when we get to the point where we are green light to move forward with a referendum and an information campaign, absolutely, those materials will all be made available, and we'll have them out there. But yeah.
And the idea to issue $59 million of bonds? Is that the sort of the overall financial plan?
Yes, but in tranches. It won't all be done at once, but yes. I mean, that's the point of that. We have to go out for referendum to fund this. There isn't any other
Okay, so
method.
there would be an initial underwriting for the school district bonds, and then a year later, whatever, 2 later, and so you
Based
roll
on
these
the
out
project cadence.
based on
Yeah.
the construction
Yep.
timeline.
So Greeley and Hubbard Woods would be up first. So we're doing some design work there to be prepared, so if we were ready to go. But yeah, that's how it would work.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And we've vetted all the financing in terms of maintaining our AAA bond rating. All of this would work in that favor, and right now, we've dialed in based upon interest rates, but obviously we're keeping a tap on how things change.
We're taking our reserves down to 40%. We'd historically maintain them at 50 to 60%, and we're taking them down to 40, but we are confident and have received multiple assurances that doesn't change our rating. And one other thing I just wanted to mention, because it really is a significant decrease from the last one. We go from 106 to 68. But the 106 was not in today's dollars. If you took last go-around's referendum and you priced it today, it would be 116. So it actually is a significant drop in what we are trying to do here.
Hi there. Thanks again. We'll echo the sentiments. I'm glad, after being listening kind of to the last time when this failed, the effort you've taken to engage the community this time from all sides versus one side. And I think it got a little divisive last time, and I'm really glad you're doing the extra. I know it's a lot of work, but engaging in a different way, that if somebody who didn't want to vote against the $90 million, $106 million plan somehow didn't care about children or education, which is the way it went last time. And this is too smart a community to fall for that. Unfailingly, this community steps up and helps out education if it's the right thing to do and the right plan. So I wanted to commend you for kind of the new view, the new fresh view, both sides, listen and make the right choice in kind of a scaled down plan. It's going to be an interesting time because we're reassessing Cook County right now. That's going to hit, I think sometime end of the year or next year, the reassessment of Cook County taxes. You're going to have this on top of that, on top of New Trier. So it's going to be but if the community feels it needs to be done, I don't think it's going to be an issue. So I think that, it is what it's going to be. I guess as I looked at 2007, what were there things that you learned from that you wanted to put in on the wish list then that you kind of realized you didn't need, or how did that learning affect what you're doing now? 'Cause the problem with transfer of information, everybody has such short terms, is that there's no real those lessons learned, I'm wondering if they're ever lost and they're not picked up. I just didn't know what you've learned.
This is way much more a question Emily should answer, but it was interesting because one of the group sessions we had was with previous board members. And one of the board members that was on the call was one of the board members in 2007. So that was before both of our time, obviously. Yep. And she explained the philosophy behind that referendum. And what I did not know at the time was they recognized at the time that Crow Island needed to update its resource center. They recognized at the time that they needed to add lunchrooms to Hubbard Woods and Crow Island. At the time, those schools didn't think they needed them. So it wasn't done. But when we presented this particular board member was like, yeah, we knew it needed to be done in 2007, but Hubbard Woods didn't want it, and Crow Island didn't want it, and they didn't recognize the need for it at that time. I think everyone recognizes the needs, particularly the lunch piece. I mean, as you say, 95% of our kids are at school now for lunch, and we have before school and after school for working families. But Emily is way more familiar with the 2007 funds than I am.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, and I would love to, we've done a lot of listening to folks who were involved even before 2007, 1996. I mean, like all of those referendums. I have them printed out in my binder. I think it's all about the balance of not asking too much, but maybe needing more than you're asking for. So I think the 2007 referendum did exactly what it set out to do. And it really achieved what it needed to at Greeley and at Carleton Washburn. And we're going to leverage that with what we're asking for now and marry that together to create a cohesive building system throughout the Waneka Public Schools. So I feel really good about this plan because it marries that and it brings it all together and it provides what we need, for teaching and learning moving forward. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but that's kind of what I think.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you as well. I participated in your citizen task force, as did Scott and a bunch of other people, and One of the things I would just say from all of those sessions, first, you put a tremendous amount of work into that, and it was a real discussion, and it was also, you definitely didn't pick a cheerleading squad. You found the right people in town, you got the full range of opinions, and it was nice for two reasons. One, I think it got you a really honest sampling of the community. Secondly, it kept those people out of our meetings, so our meetings were much calmer. So thank you.
We can have the debate of who's had calmer meetings recently. I mean, we might really lose that one.
Yeah. No, you did a great job. I will say I was not a supporter of the last referendum in 2019, whereas for all the reasons that I think you set out at the beginning, whereas there was some sort of wish list aspects to this. What I love about the plan you have now is these are things we should be doing. I think they're really not up for debate. I think you're talking about life, health, safety, maintenance, investing in assets that we as a village really value. So I just don't see it as being terribly controversial. I think there's three things. One other thing I'll say before I get to that, but I also want to thank you all for the planning you put into it, which helped us on the stormwater side. You took the time to invest in the architectural design, consultations, and all that stuff so that we had a place to put the water. And I think people really need to understand that this is a really far-sighted thing, and you weren't just thinking about a very narrow mission of like, here are the schools, let's, make the schools the best. It really was a village-wide approach you took, so that was awesome. And so the three things that I think, we on the village council and other bodies can and should be doing is first recognizing that the tax burden issue, what affects residents is the total tax burden, and what you're doing is going to increase the burden a little bit. It makes it that much more important that we do our job and hold the line as much as possible on taxes on our end, because we know the priorities of the residents in this town. We know, life safety things are really important. That's why we're concerned with stormwater and police and fire. But the schools are what draw people to this town. We know that. And so I think that's just something we have to be very, very mindful of. And that's something we see over and over again with the caucus surveys, that they want us to be coordinating. They want us to prioritize across boards appropriately. And so I think it's really clear that what you're doing with this project should be a major priority for all of the boards, and not just the school board. The second thing, while we're thinking about things that we can do, aside from holding the line on taxes from the other bodies, and we've had this conversation, but attracting businesses and bringing the vibrancy, like what Scott's doing with the music festival, all these things increase the revenue in this town, right? Increases our sales tax base, ultimately increases the property tax base. So I think that's something else we can do. And then the last thing is, I think, each of us ought to be relaying this to the people that we deal with on a day-to-day basis with village issues, because we get, and I know some people feel very strongly about this, but we get a lot of wish list items presented to us, and we get a lot of emails saying, why the hell above ground power lines. I see the issue with above ground power lines in terms of our power stability, but we need to be balanced about it because it can be tremendously expensive. So when we get the wish list of priorities, we need to be thinking not just about like, hey, we're trying to hold the line on taxes. We also need to make it clear to people that, there's a lot going on in the village and we see the big picture. So anyway, really appreciate all the work. It was truly a multi-year effort. I just know from all those meetings, you really did listen. It was never argumentative or defensive. When someone came in like hot, you listened. And I saw many, and Scott, I'm sure you did too, this plan wasn't like formed and then presented for us to praise. There was like version 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, and it was constantly in flux. And I think it shows in what you've presented tonight. So I feel very positive, and if I had to put odds on it, I think you've got very good odds on this referendum. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Andy's got odds on it. We can see it on Sports Stool next, or what? Will it pass or won't it?
Yeah.
All right, well, look at, first of all, Dawn, I'm heartbroken to hear that you're,
It's been 3 years. More than I was supposed to do. And
No
Emily,
offense,
you're
Emily, but,
amazing.
you know, Dawn and I have been through a lot. I mean, we've been through 10 years of stuff in a very, very short time, and it's been amazing. You know, you've been an amazing partner when it came to stormwater. You know, your leadership through COVID was amazing, and I took a lot of notes from your playbook as it came to dealing with the public, and it was just, you know, you have done a fantastic job. And look, we all know navigating in a built-out, mature community is a lot trickier than if you were out in some farm field where a new town just sprung up, right? I mean, we have aging infrastructure, we have aging buildings, we have aging schools, and then we have the additional pressure of being one of the best at what we do across the board. And there is a real balancing act. Andy, you're right on the button with that one, that you know, trying to find that place you can live between not killing your friends and neighbors with financial burden and doing what you know is right in your heart is not an easy thing. And even this initiative, Dawn, I know this is something you picked up and have really, really turned it into something I think this community can support. And certainly on a personal level, you can call on me because I certainly support the effort, and I can see the vision now, which is probably the most important thing. I do think your demographers are wrong, because all they'd have to do is sit out in Dwyer Park on a sunny Saturday and they would recognize that their count is missing a lot of people. So much like back in the early 90s when I came here, and the schools were caught off guard back then too. I mean, all of a sudden there was just this influx of little kids that nobody was expecting, and it became a big deal. So, but Emily, I look forward to working with you. I'll make sure I get your phone number at the top of the call list, because now that we're almost done with the Park District, we'll be coming back for a repeat performance with the school board too. So,
We welcome
Anyway.
that, so
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
being such
Appreciate
great
the hard
partners.
work, really.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations. So,
Thanks.
good deal. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Now we'll leave that slide up for the rest of the night so it all stays. Okay. We're learning a lot tonight, aren't we? So now we can move forward and actually spend some money and do a little business. All right, item 6 is approval of the agenda, right?
Yes.
This is the latest we've ever done a consent agenda ever. Does any trustee wish to remove an item from the consent agenda for a separate vote? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, consent agenda. I will ask our assistant, are you the deputy?
I'm the
Clerk?
assistant
No, the
village
clerk.
manager and the deputy village clerk.
I will ask the deputy village clerk to read the items on the consent agenda.
Approval of the village council minutes from the February 15th, 2022 study session. Approval of the council minutes from the March 1, 2022 regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated February 22nd, 2022 to March 7th, 2022 in the amount of $1,002,720.46. Approval of the annual outdoor seating permits. And resolution number R39-2022, awarding a contract to WEG Transformers USA LLC for a pad mount transformer for adoption.
Thanks, Kristen. All right, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn, Trustee Mancini, Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, ordinances and resolutions. Item A, resolution number R40-2022, approval of street rehab. Village staff has requested that this item be deferred to a later date to allow staff to do some additional planning and analysis for this project. Without objection, therefore, this item is deferred. I want to say that the reason why this item is being deferred is because we were just made aware of more unfunded mandates from the state of Illinois that are requiring municipalities to foot the bill for the replacement of lead water services into private residences. And anytime you touch or replace a new cast iron water main, you now must, at least it appears, you must replace the lead service at that time. While I'm not saying that this is bad from a public health standpoint, I mean, we should get lead out of everything. But the state was very, very unclear on who the hell is supposed to pay for this. And whenever there's some disparity like this, you can bet where the finger is going to point. So, you know, poor Brian and Jim have to go back and retool this entire thing and try to figure out what the hell we're going to do next. So we'll see this coming back. It'll be manipulated and thought through in a much more analytical manner. We'll also be relying heavily on Peter and his people to help guide us as far as how we think about this thing going forward. But we're talking about some significant impacts. And I do not know how the state of Illinois can expect villages and municipalities with 80-year and 100-year storm water mains, which are all over Cook County and DuPage County, and then also put the burden on them of replacing the lead lines that were originally installed by private contractors for private residences. I don't know how it works. I'm really pissed about it right now, and the fact is we know what these water mains look like. They're breaking left and right. And it's bad enough these guys got to go out there and work Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, whatever. But now they got to sit there and try to figure out whether they're going to rip up somebody's front lawn and run a new copper line into their building. Into the building.
It's remarkable. They never cease to amaze me.
Chris, that was confusing to me. I mean, are we not, I mean, legislation doesn't just, pop up one morning and get passed. I mean, these
yes,
things.
it does.
Well, Peter, maybe you can opine on this a little bit. I mean, I'm surprised that we didn't get any, like, advance notice and feedback that this was kind of going through the system, that the possibility, something. I mean, it was just surprising to me that we just heard about.
Yeah, I mean, the legislation is, it's not simple to read. There are a lot of dates in it. There's some things that are 2023, 2024, 2022. The whole replacement program, depending on how many lines you have, can go out 50 years. But the part that some knew, some didn't, including maybe IML, about when you go in and you fix a main, that triggers a requirement. That just began in January 1 of 2022. So there, you know, a lot of municipalities can't do it. I mean, for the reasons we
Right.
said. So we're just gonna. There's no real enforcement mechanism in the legislation, also, but it says what it says.
And how does this remind us again on the legislation that's requiring the replacement of the private lines? Does that kick in?
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, no, not related to the water main repair.
No, but yeah, the lead line that leads the.
That's 24, is that right?
That's 22. It's when you're in connection with the replacement of a water main or a fixing of a water main, if there's lead lines connected to that main where you're going to be replacing part of the main, the requirement kicks in. Now, there's going to be some lead lines that we never touch because our water main doesn't need repairs. Those have a separate requirement. That's when you get out into the, you know, the 2030 perhaps.
But I thought there was, Andy, wasn't there a separate, we talked about this recently, a separate piece of legislation that was requiring the replacement of the lead private service lines?
Right.
To the B box.
But not in conjunction with repair of water mains. I thought it was a separate, and we
It's
were
all
talking
the
about how are we going to fund this? There could be infrastructure grants and.
Yeah, it's all in the same bill. It's just two different requirements of the same bill. There's one requirement that kicks in if you're touching it with a water main. The other requirement you're talking about is just private lines where we're not touching it. Though there is still the requirement that those get replaced. And there's no, I mean, we have to inventory them, publish our inventory, and then there's a long lead time. There are theoretically funding sources, but I'm sure it's a drop in the bucket to the total cost.
Say, Peter, the legislation, it doesn't make clear how quickly you have to do it, does it?
Not, well, again, when it's connected to a water main, you're supposed to be doing it in connection with the repair of or replacement or fixing of the water main. Unrelated to that water main work, there's an outside date.
That's what I'm wondering, is there's an outside?
That depends on how many you have, but it's
Okay.
20, 30, or 40 years.
So that's the part that made me feel a little bit more comfortable, is that we can keep doing what we're doing. Because, when these things pop, you got to fix them. You can't be screwing around with somebody's front yard in the frozen tundra. And I think what we do is we just start listing the damn things, keep an inventory, and tackle them that way.
Is there also,
The legislation
Over 20
requires
to
that,
30
too.
years.
Right.
as you look at this, and this isn't probably the forum to talk about it, but is there, with this rule, is there any liability issues that could spring up?
Because of the existence of the lead lines?
Or that, how they're
No, going
repaired,
into
or when they're
people's homes.
repaired, or,
Well, the exception is if a property owner refuses to allow you onto their property. The legislation contemplates that there may be disputes, and the property owner may say, no, you can't come here, but there's a process that the municipality has to go through at that point to say, okay, we're not doing it because you've refused. There is a liability issue with regard to that, and the legislation tries to deal with that imperfectly.
yeah.
Peter, is there any, I know nobody wants to be on the wrong side of trying to preserve lead lines,
Exactly.
but, part of the history of this, is my understanding, is that it was embedded in the Illinois Building Code into the 80s, that you had to have certain type of, especially in Chicago, like, I think this was part of the Illinois Building Code way beyond many other states. And so is there any talk of other municipalities challenging this, trying to, fund the mandate, or is it just too new?
Well, it's new, and there really is no way to challenge the mandate. FOIA is an unfunded mandate that we can't challenge. There's all sorts of unfunded mandates. The legislature can require us to do it, or they can't.
But municipalities were required to have these certain types of
Understood.
you know what I'm saying? It's
Right.
because of a state legislation that was baked in for a lot of really weird historical reasons, for a long time.
Unions.
Well, I didn't want to say it.
I'll say it, unions.
Can we get away out of this by putting like filters, we're putting them in our house? As the lines come into your home, isn't that gonna be cheaper than trying to dig up somebody's whole world?
I'll leave that to Brian.
Okay.
Answer.
You know what I mean? If there's a problem, or make them available to residents who wanna buy them. But there's gotta be another way than this.
What percentage of people left Illinois?
Yeah.
Okay, item 9, old business, there is none. Item 10, new business, there is none. Item 11, appointments. Okay, I'd like to appoint trustee Kripe to fill the unexpired term of Kim on the Environmental and Forestry Commission. Kim has left the EFC to go to Plan Commission, so I would like to have a motion to appoint Andy as trustee liaison to the EFC.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that motion carries. Closed session, there is none tonight, and 13 adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move. Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned, thank you.
Isn't any